In this video, we're going to do the second half of endocrine system, and we're going to get into all of the glands and then other cells that secrete different hormones, okay? So let's start with the thyroid gland. This is within the neck here, okay? So it's like underneath where the voice box is, okay? So it's this butterfly-shaped gland inferior to the voice box or larynx, and anterior or in front of the trachea, okay? So it has a right and left lateral lobe, and if this is the anterior view, it's anatomical, so this would be the left lateral lobe, this would be the right lateral lobe, okay? And it's connected by an isthmus, so this center area would be the isthmus, okay? So that's our thyroid gland. So there are follicular cells within the thyroid gland. These are stimulated by thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, that's secreted from the anterior pituitary. And it tells the thyroid gland to produce T3 and T4. So T3 is triiodothyronine and T4 is thyroxine. Okay, so these are the thyroid glands. So we'll say secretes T3, T4. Sorry, that should be a subscript. Okay, T3 and T4. Okay. Also secreted from the thyroid gland from these different cells known as parafollicular cells is calcitonin. And we already talked about calcitonin. It helps to regulate calcium homeostasis within the blood. Okay. So it helps to build back up bone when we have enough calcium in the blood. So calcitonin. Okay, also secreted, but this is secreted by parafollicular cells. This is secreted by the follicular cells of the thyroid. Okay, and in all these you'll see there, in a lot of them, there are different types of cells that secrete different types of things in general. Okay, and we'll see what it looks like underneath the microscope in class, in lab. Okay. Okay, so what do our thyroid hormones do? So T3 and T4 increase our basal metabolic rate, so increase our metabolism, okay? That helps us to maintain normal body temperature. They also stimulate synthesis of proteins, increase the use of glucose in the body and fatty acids to produce ATP, so that's like part of our metabolism as well, right? They can help to reduce blood pressure, and they can work with growth hormone and insulin to accelerate body growth as well, okay? So these are the thyroid is very active in, specifically in childhood, and then a little bit active in adulthood, but not nearly as much, okay? Okay, so remember we had in our hypothalamus thyrotropin releasing hormone that cause thyroid stimulating hormone from the anterior pituitary to be secreted, okay? And then that acts on the thyroid, so the follicular cells to secrete T3 and T4, okay? Parathyroid glands, so this is the posterior view of the thyroid. So the parathyroid glands are these four like little nodules on the back of the thyroid, okay? So we have two types of cells for our parathyroid gland as well. Chief cells, also known as principal cells, and these produce parathyroid hormone, PTH, parathyroid hormone, and oxyphil cells, okay? The function is not well known of the oxyphil cells, but they secrete extra parathyroid hormone when someone has parathyroid cancer. Okay, so we're not going to worry too much about those. We're just going to concentrate on parathyroid hormone secreted by those chief cells. And you can see pictures of the parathyroid glands underneath the microscope and what those chief cells and oxyphil cells look like. Okay. Okay. So remember, calcitonin and parathyroid hormone are two of those antagonistic hormones. Okay, So they work in conjunction with each other to regulate our calcium homeostasis within the body. Okay, so we already went through this in AMP1, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, and I already kind of talked about it, but you can review it in the power plant as well. Okay, adrenal gland, so this here is a nice little kidney, okay, and it has a little hat, okay, so that little hat is the adrenal gland, and then I did like a little section, a cross section here, okay, and I showed the inside of the adrenal gland. On the outside there's a cortex, and then the inner area is the medulla, okay, so they're located on top of each kidney. They're also sometimes known as the suprarenal gland. You can call it either way, but more commonly known as the adrenal gland. Okay. All right. So histologically, the cortex has 3 regions. Okay. The most superior region is the zona glomerulosa, then the zona fasciculata, and then the zona reticularis. Okay. So the zona glomerulosa, the more upper region, secretes mineralocorticoids, and these regulate the mineral homeostasis in the body. So I'll say mineralocorticoids. Okay. The zona fasciculata secretes glucocorticoids. Okay, and these affect glucose homeostasis, which is really important in the body. And then the zona reticularis secretes weak androgens. So androgens give, these are hormones that give masculinizing effects, so like secondary sex characteristics for males. And they're also found in females as well, okay, but in smaller amounts. Okay, so one of the major mineralocorticoids secreted by the adrenal gland is aldosterone, and this helps to regulate sodium and potassium homeostasis within the body. Okay, so the RAA pathway controls secretion of aldosterone, which again, that's a mineralocorticoid. Okay, so the RAA pathway is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone pathway. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit already, right? So say we're dehydrated, or we have a sodium deficiency, or we're hemorrhaging, so we're losing blood, okay? All of those would cause a decrease in blood volume, right? With sodium, water follows sodium into cells, so then that would cause a decreased blood volume as well. So that's why the sodium thing is there. Okay. So decrease in blood volume, that would cause a decrease in blood pressure, okay? That causes the juxtaglomerular cells of the kidney to secrete renin, okay? It also causes the liver to secrete angiotensin, okay? So renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, okay? So renin and angiotensin are very important. Those cause increase in angiotensin 1, okay? In the lungs, that's converted to angiotensin 2, okay? Then in our adrenal cortex, there is an increased secretion of aldosterone, okay? From there, so the aldosterone can, in the kidneys, sodium and water reabsorption increases, okay? And we have increased secretion of potassium and hydrogen ions into the urine. We're going to talk about this more when we get to the urinary system as well, so you do need to know this pathway for urinary system also, okay? So when we're reabsorbing more water back into the body, that would increase our blood volume more, increase our blood pressure until it returns to normal, okay? And then we're all set, and we don't need to secrete any more aldosterone until maybe we're dehydrated again, or we're hemorrhaging again, or we have low amounts of sodium again. Okay. Okay. Glucocorticoids. An example of a glucocorticoid is cortisone. Okay, and cortisone reduces allergic reactions. So you can find cortisone in like creams, right? Cortisone creams. And if you have like redness, it should reduce that because that's some sort of inflammation happening in a lot of cases. Okay. These glucocorticoids here are also regulated by negative feedback. Okay, so they control lots of different things: breakdown of proteins, formation of glucose in the body, which is really important for energy, lipolysis, so breakdown of fat, resisting stress, help with reducing inflammation, and with the immune system as well. Okay. Androgens, the major androgen secreted by the adrenal cortex is dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA. Okay, so after puberty in males, testosterone is secreted in very large quantities. Okay, so DHEA doesn't have much of an effect in males after puberty. In females, remember I said females do have androgens as well. Okay, so in females, DHEA helps in promoting libido, and they can be converted to estrogen. Okay, so during and after menopause, all of the estrogens in the female come from the adrenal androgens like DHEA. Okay, then we have the medulla. The adrenal gland does so much. Okay, then we have the medulla. There are chromaffin cells in the medulla, and these secrete epinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine, which is also known as noradrenaline. And these are both involved in that fight or flight response. Okay, so those are also very important. Okay, so what they really do is they enhance the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system when we are under a lot of stress. Okay, so they enhance that fight or flight response. Okay, then we have the pancreas here. It's within the curve of the duodenum, so the duodenum would kind of curve around it right here. That's the first part of the small intestine, and it's right behind the stomach as well. And it secretes exocrine glands as well as endocrine glands. So we'll learn about the exocrine glands when we get to digestive system, but it also secretes endocrine glands. Okay. So the exocrine cells are arranged in these clusters within the pancreas known as acini, and they produce those digestive enzymes. Okay. There are also clusters of endocrine tissue known as pancreatic islets or islets of Langerhans, and these have secreting cells as well. Okay, and those islets of Langerhans are what secrete the hormones. Okay, so we have alpha cells in the islets that secrete glucagon. Beta cells secrete insulin. Delta cells secrete somatostatin, and F cells secrete pancreatic polypeptide. Okay, so glucagon decreases the blood level of glucose if we have too much of that. Insulin increases the blood level of glucose, so those work antagonistically to each other. Somatostatin inhibits secretion of insulin and glucagon, okay, and it slows absorption of nutrients from the GI tract. Okay, so I think I said glucagon and insulin oppositely. Glucagon raises glucose levels, and insulin decreases glucose levels. Sorry about that, I said those oppositely. Okay, and then pancreatic polypeptide inhibits somatostatin secretion when we have too much. Okay, so both insulin and glucagon are controlled by negative feedback systems. Okay, so let's talk about insulin and glucagon in a bit more detail. Okay, so if we have low blood glucose, okay, we're hypoglycemic, this stimulates those alpha cells to secrete glucagon. okay? Glucagon can act on the liver, okay, to convert glycogen to glucose, okay? And then glucose is released by the liver to increase blood glucose levels back to normal, okay? Now, if that blood glucose continues to arise, then we would get hyperglycemic. We'd have too much glucose in the blood, and that would inhibit release of further glucagon, okay? So that's our negative feedback system there. If we have high blood glucose or are hyperglycemic, okay, those beta cells will secrete insulin, okay? And insulin acts on various different body cells to accelerate glucose diffusion into cells, to speed up conversion of glucose into glycogen, okay, because we don't want all that glucose in our blood, right? We don't want to be hyperglycemic, so turning into glycogen. Increase protein synthesis and speed up synthesis of fatty acids. Then our blood glucose levels will fall. If they continue to fall, we will become hypoglycemic and that glucagon pathway would start again. So they work together, but they're antagonistic, right? Like parathyroid hormone and calcitonin, okay? Okay, ovaries and testes, so our gonads, these produce gametes. So ovaries produce oocytes, testes produce sperm, okay? So ovaries produce estradiol and estrone, which are both types of estrogen. They also produce progesterone, relaxin, and inhibin. And testes produce testosterone. Okay, so we'll learn a lot more about all of those when we get to reproductive system at the end of the semester. Okay, so estrogens and progesterone help with the female cycle, okay, the reproductive cycle, maintaining pregnancy, preparing mammary glands for lactation, and development of secondary female sexual characteristics. Okay, testosterone stimulates descent of the testes before birth, regulates production of sperm, and promotes development of those male secondary sex characteristics, okay? All right, pineal gland in the brain, that small little gland, okay? It's attached to the roof of the third ventricle. It secretes melatonin, and this helps to regulate the body's biological clock, so telling the body when it's tired, right, when low light, more melatonin will be secreted and will become sleepy. Okay, the thymus, this is located right above the heart, okay? It produces a few different hormones, thymosin, thymohumoral factor, thymic factor, and thymopoietin, okay? And they promote maturation of T cells in the immune system. And again, we'll learn about immune system this semester as well, okay? There are other tissues and organs not part of the endocrine system, but that can produce different hormones, okay? So in the skin, we have cholecalciferol. This helps with synthesis of calcitriol, which is the active form of vitamin D, okay? I'll just talk about a few of these. You can read them in the PowerPoint. CCK, this is a somewhat important one. This stimulates secretion of the pancreatic juices, okay, and regulates release of bile from the gallbladder when we need to break down fats in the digestive system, okay. It also helps us to feel full after we're done eating. Okay, estrogens and progesterone, we already talked about those. We talked about renin. Erythropoietin, that's an important one we'll talk about when we get to the heart. So erythropoietin increases the rate of, when we talk about blood, not heart, increases the rate of red blood cell formation. Okay, so that's an important one that we're going to talk about. And ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide, that's the one that's secreted in from the heart. This helps to decrease blood pressure if blood pressure gets too high. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the stress response. So there's lots of hormones involved in the stress response. Okay. So O-stress is helpful. It's spelled EU stress. Okay, this is the type of helpful everyday stress that keeps us motivated to study for our classes, for example, right? So it prepares us to meet challenges. Distress, right? If you're in distress, this is a bad type of stress. Distress, right? I'm in distress, right? You're like very, very stressed out. This is where your fight or flight response would be activated, okay? So to prepare for some sort of immediate activity, okay? Then, after the fight or flight response, we have the resistance reaction, okay? If this resistance reaction lasts too long, this is where we could get like exhausted from how much stress that we are under, okay? Okay, so in the stress response, lots of different things happening. So let me erase all of this. We'll draw a little flow chart here. So we have our hypothalamus, we have our pituitary gland. Okay, I'm going to draw the anterior pituitary on this side. Okay, I'm just going to kind of color that in there. Okay, so this is our anterior pituitary. Okay, all right, so few different things happening here. So here we have CRH, corticotropic releasing hormone, GHRH, growth hormone releasing hormone, and TRH, okay, thyrotropin releasing hormone, okay. Those stimulate the release of, CRH stimulates the release of, actually let me erase some of this here, ACTH, okay. Growth hormone releasing hormone, growth hormone, GH, and TRH, TSH. Okay. So CRH, ACTH, GH, and TRH, TSH. Okay. Okay. ACTH acts on our adrenal cortex and tells it to release cortisol. Okay, this stress response would cause gluconeogenesis, the creation of glucose, lipolysis, breakdown of fat, protein metabolism, sensitized blood vessels, and reduced inflammation. Growth hormone can act on the liver to produce lipolysis and gluconeogenesis. Okay, and TSH acts on the thyroid gland to produce T3 and T4, which increase our metabolism, which would therefore increase our use of glucose to produce more ATP. Okay. Also from the hypothalamus, nerve impulses would be sent to the sympathetic system of the spinal cord and act on sympathetic nerves. Okay. Those would cause the adrenal medulla to secrete adrenaline and noradrenaline. Okay, so that helps to supplement or prolong the fight or flight response. And the sympathetic nerves would also act on visceral effectors, so effectors within different organs, okay, and cause even more of a stress response. So increased heart rate in the heart, constriction of blood vessels, that would happen to blood vessels, or dilation of blood vessels as well to help us get more oxygen and nutrients to our body. Okay, constriction of blood vessels would happen like in the skin where we kind of don't need as much blood at that time. We want to focus on getting nutrients like to our lungs, for example, so we could breathe more and run away from something, right? Contraction of the spleen, conversion of glycogen into glucose, sweating, airway dilation, decreasing digestive activity. Remember, in our fight or flight response, we turn off our digestive system because we don't care about digesting our food right now. We just want to get away from whatever is harming us, okay? And then retention of water and elevating blood pressure, again, to help us run away from anything, okay? So that's the stress response. Aging in the endocrine system. Some levels of hormones will increase and some will decrease and some stay the same. So it really depends on the specific hormone that we are talking about. Okay. If endocrine glands are not being used, they reduce in size. So an example of that, and this would happen as we age if there are not as many hormones being produced depending on the gland. A good example of that is with testosterone. So if you're taking testosterone from a shot or a gel, the testes do decrease in size because the testes are what secrete testosterone on their own. But if you're getting it from an outside source, right, your body doesn't need to secrete it on its own anymore because that negative or that feedback system, right, that negative feedback system isn't telling the body to secrete more testosterone because we're getting it from that outside source. So the testes do shrink in size. And this would be for any hormone that you're getting from an outside source. If the body's not producing that hormone anymore, that gland or whatever area that produces it is going to shrink because it's not producing anymore. Okay, some endocrine disorders to end things out. Okay, we're going to talk about 4 different disorders very briefly. Pituitary gigantism and acromegaly. Acromegaly is when your head grows very large. This is caused by excess secretion of growth hormone. Okay, so we did talk about gigantism already when we talked about bones. Okay, so growth hormone causes bones to grow, so in gigantism you grow a lot taller and larger than you typically would. A goiter, this is like a large mass, and it's caused by reduction of the production of thyroid hormones. Okay, so this would be a thyroid issue. Graves' disease, this is due to excess thyroid hormone. Okay, so the opposite. And in Graves' disease, you can see like those bulging eyes. That's one of the characteristic signals of that. And Cushing syndrome, this is caused by an excess secretion of glucocorticoids. Okay, so the face like gets very, very red in Cushing syndrome.